My name is Margaret Lee. I'm 65 years old and I live alone in a small town called Maple Ridge, somewhere between the mountains and the endless roads of Wyoming. It's quiet here, too quiet sometimes. You can hear the wind carry the sound of train whistles at night or the creak of the porch swing that's been here longer than I can remember. I spend my mornings making tea and my evenings watching the sunset fade behind the barns. And for 7 long years, my phone never rang. 7 years. That's how long it had been since I last heard my son's voice. The last time we spoke, the words were sharp, and my heart, even now, still trembles remembering that night. He had slammed the door, walked down those steps, and said he was done. Done with this house, done with me, done with everything that reminded him of his father. I remember standing at that same porch door holding his favorite mug, the blue one with chipped paint on the rim. He'd left it behind. That night, it broke in my hands. People say time heals everything. Maybe they're right, but sometimes time just teaches you how to live with the pain. And then one rainy evening, out of nowhere, my phone lit up. An unfamiliar number. I almost didn't pick up, but something inside me whispered, "Answer it." So I did. And the voice that came through, it trembled, it cracked, and then it said, "Mom, I remember now." Just 6 words. But after 7 years of silence, those words broke something open inside me, something I had kept buried under layers of pride, fear, and love that never really went away. That was the night everything changed. And this is the story of what led to that one call. I was 24 when I had Daniel. He was my miracle baby, born after 3 years of trying and 1 heartbreaking miscarriage. When I held him in my arms for the first time, I remember whispering, "You're my whole world, little man." He had his father's eyes, soft hazel with a hint of mischief, and his laugh, that laugh could fill a room with sunshine. We weren't a rich family, but we had love. My husband, Tom, worked as a mechanic at the old garage down the street. I used to bake pies for the church every Sunday, and Daniel would run around with the neighborhood kids until the streetlights came on. Our little town wasn't much, 1 diner, 1 grocery store, 1 post office. But it was home. Tom and Daniel were inseparable. They'd fix old bikes together, build bird houses, or go fishing by the lake every summer. And I'd watch from the porch, my hands covered in flour, smiling like life couldn't ever go wrong. But it did. It always does, doesn't it? Tom passed away when Daniel was 17. A heart attack. Sudden. Unexpected. He was changing the oil in a neighbor's car when it happened. I remember the phone call. The way the world seemed to stop spinning. The way Daniel stood there, frozen, his eyes wide and dry, as if refusing to believe what he'd just heard. That night, I sat beside my son in silence. He didn't cry, not once. He just stared at the empty chair at the dinner table. And from that moment, I could feel something closing off inside him. He started staying out late, stopped eating dinner with me. His grades dropped, and the smile I loved, that warm, bright smile, disappeared behind long silences and locked doors. I tried everything a mother could. I made his favorite meals, I talked gently, I prayed every night, but nothing reached him. One evening, I found a note under his door. It wasn't a goodbye note, not yet, but it said, "Mom, stop treating me like a kid. I need space." I told myself it was just a phase. Grief looks different for everyone after all. But deep down, I felt him slipping away from me. Months passed, then years. Daniel graduated high school, barely speaking to me. He didn't invite me to his graduation ceremony. I sat at home that day, looking at his old baby photos and the tassel I bought him that he never wore. He left for college soon after, somewhere in California, and though I didn't have much, I sent him what little I could. Care packages, homemade cookies, birthday cards. Sometimes he'd call, but the calls grew shorter. Then they stopped, and before I knew it, it had been 3 years since I'd last heard his voice. Still, every morning I'd check my phone. Still, every holiday I'd set an extra plate at the table. Still, every night I'd whisper, "Good night, Daniel," before turning off the lights. People in town started asking, "Have you heard from your boy?" I'd smile and lie. "He's doing great." Because that's what mothers do. We protect our children's image, even when they forget ours. Then one day, I heard from a friend of a friend that Daniel had moved again, this time to Seattle. He had a job at a tech company, a girl hind, a life. And I was happy for him, truly. But I also realized that my son was building a world where I didn't exist anymore. Still, I waited. For his birthday call, for Christmas, for anything. And it never came. Until that night, 7 years later, when the rain fell heavy against my windows and the phone finally rang. "Hello?" I said, my voice trembling. There was a pause, then a breath, then, "Mom?" I remember now. Just 6 words, and I knew something was about to change. I remember the first time I realized my son had truly changed. It was the summer after his first year of college. He came home for just 1 week. I was so excited. I spent 3 whole days cleaning the house, changing the bed sheets, even baking that same apple pie he used to love as a child. I stood at the kitchen window that morning, watching his old pickup truck roll into the driveway. My heart was racing. I thought he'd run to me, maybe even hug me. But when he got out of the car, he looked different, older, colder. There was a tired look in his eyes I didn't recognize. He hugged me, but it was one of those quick, polite hugs people give strangers at the airport. Then he said, "Hey, Mom, I can't stay long. I've got plans with some friends in town." I tried to smile, but something inside me cracked a little. "Of course, honey," I said softly. "I'm just glad you're here." He walked past me into the house, looked around and said, "Everything looks the same." I laughed, trying to keep it light. "Well, that's what home's for, right?" But he didn't answer. He just went upstairs to his old room. Later that night, I heard him talking on the phone. His voice sounded happy, free almost, and I realized that the version of my son who laughed like that didn't exist here anymore. The days passed quietly. He'd leave early, come home late. I'd stay up, pretending to read, waiting to hear the creak of the front door. One night I asked if we could have dinner together. He said, "Sure, Mom." So I cooked his favorite meal, meatloaf with mashed potatoes, just like old times. We sat at the table. He scrolled through his phone. I tried to start a conversation. "How's college?" "It's fine." "Made any new friends?" "Yeah." Long pause. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. I wanted to tell him about the garden, about how I finally got the roses to bloom again. But he wasn't really there. He was lost somewhere else, maybe thinking of a girl or a city or a life that didn't include this quiet little home. After dinner, I walked him to the porch. The sky was painted orange and purple. I said softly, "I miss you, Daniel." He looked at me, half smiled, and said, "I know, Mom. I just need some space." That phrase again, space. It had become his favorite word. He drove off that night, and I watched his taillights fade into the dark, wondering when I became a burden instead of comfort. The next few years, I tried to give him that space. I didn't call too often. I sent short messages. "Hope you're doing okay," or "I made your favorite pie today." Sometimes I'd get a simple thanks. Sometimes nothing at all. Birthdays passed quietly. I'd bake a cake anyway, just a small one. I'd light a candle, close my eyes, and whisper, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." But no call ever came. 2 years later, something inside me decided to try again. I took a bus to Seattle to surprise him. I'd been saving money for months. I thought, maybe if he sees me, really sees me, something might change. I remember stepping off that bus, holding a small gift bag in my hands, a sweater I'd knitted for him. It was raining, of course, Seattle rain, cold and endless. I took a cab to the address I'd found on his last Christmas card, a small apartment building near the waterfront. My hands were shaking as I pressed the buzzer. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. Then, just as I was about to leave, I saw him coming down the street, umbrella in one hand, phone in the other. He almost didn't notice me, and when he did, his eyes widened in surprise. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I smiled, nervous. "I wanted to see you. It's been so long." He glanced around, embarrassed maybe. Then he said quietly, "You could have called first." That one line cut deeper than he probably realized. "I didn't want to bother you," I whispered. He sighed. "I'm not bothering you, Mom. I'm just busy." Busy. Another word that had become our wall. We stood there under his umbrella, rain dripping down, both unsure what to say next. I handed him the small gift bag. "I made this for you." He looked inside, saw the sweater, and smiled faintly. "Thanks," but I could tell it would never leave the bag. We talked for maybe 10 minutes, mostly small talk. Then he said, Listen, I've got to get back to work. And just like that, it was over. I walked back to the bus stop, my clothes damp, my heart heavier than ever. When I sat down, I realized I had forgotten my umbrella on his doorstep. A part of me hoped he'd notice it, maybe call me later to say, "Hey, Mom, you left this behind." But he never did. Back home, the loneliness grew thicker. I stopped baking for a while, stopped going to the church potlucks. Everywhere I looked, there were traces of him, his childhood drawings on the fridge, the old fishing rod in the corner, the photo of the three of us by the lake. I wanted to let go, but how do you let go of someone who's still breathing? One Sunday, the pastor spoke about forgiveness. He said, "Sometimes we need to forgive even those who never said sorry." I sat in the back pew, my hands folded tightly, tears falling before I could stop them, because I knew he was right, and I knew I wasn't ready. Years passed quietly, marked only by the seasons. Summer faded into autumn, autumn into snow. I started keeping a diary, not to complain, just to remember. I'd write small notes like, "Saw a boy who looked like Daniel today," or "Cooked his favorite soup, tasted the same." Sometimes I'd write letters I never sent. "Dear Daniel, I hope you're happy. I miss hearing your voice. I miss the way you used to hum while fixing your bike. Love, Mom." I must have written 100 letters. None of them ever left the drawer. Then came the day everything broke. The day of the final words. It was a Thursday. I was in the kitchen making tea when my phone rang. The screen flashed his name. I froze. For a second, I thought maybe this was it. Maybe he missed me. I answered quickly, smiling. "Daniel, it's so good to hear your voice." He sighed. "Mom, we need to talk." The tone in his voice, it wasn't soft. It was distant, cold. "What is it, sweetheart?" "Look, I just think maybe it's better if we stop talking for a while. I can't keep doing this guilt thing every time we talk." "Guilt?" I asked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, every time I call, you sound sad. You make me feel like I'm doing something wrong by living my life." My heart sank. "Daniel, I never—" He interrupted. "Mom, please, I need to focus on my own stuff. You should too. I'll call you when I'm ready." And before I could say another word, the line went dead. I stood there, holding the phone against my ear long after the call ended. The kettle whistled on the stove, but I couldn't move. It felt like the whole house had gone silent. That was the last time I heard his voice, until 7 years later. That night, I went out to the porch. The sky was dark, the stars hidden. I whispered, "If giving you peace means losing you, then I'll do it." I thought I was strong, but the next morning, I woke up with tears on my pillow. And every morning after that, I whispered the same thing, until it became a prayer. For 7 years, silence became my closest companion. It sat beside me at breakfast, walked with me through the grocery store, and followed me to bed every night. I stopped waiting for the phone to ring, stopped setting the extra plate at the table. At least, that's what I told myself. But hope doesn't really die, does it? It just sleeps, quietly, stubbornly, in the corners of your heart. In those years, I learned to live small. I planted more flowers in the garden. I joined a knitting club at the church. I even got a rescue cat named Misty. She was gray, quiet, and liked to nap on Daniel's old bed. Somehow, her soft purring filled the silence just enough to make the days feel bearable. I talked to her sometimes, not because I expected her to understand, but because it helped. "Do you think he's eating well, Misty?" I'd ask, stroking her fur. She'd blink slowly, as if to say, "Maybe." Those were the small things that kept me from crumbling. Then one morning, I was sitting by the window, sipping tea, when I saw an envelope in the mailbox. No return address, just my name, Margaret Lee. The handwriting looked familiar, and my heart skipped. I walked slowly back into the house, sat at the table, and stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a simple folded piece of paper. It said, "Hi, Mom. I don't know if you still live here, but I wanted to send this anyway. I'm getting married. Her name's Emily. She's kind, smart, and she makes me laugh again. We're not planning a big wedding, but I thought you should know. Hope you're doing well. Daniel." That was it. No phone number. No address. Just a letter. A single paragraph to bridge 7 years of silence. I held that paper like it was a living thing. It shook in my hands. Tears blurred the words until they looked like raindrops on glass. My son was getting married, and I wasn't invited. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the rain against the window. I wondered if he thought of me while writing that letter. Did he hesitate before signing his name? Did he think maybe I'd want to see him in a tuxedo again, smiling, laughing, living? I thought about calling him. But what would I say? Congratulations? I miss you? Why didn't you call me sooner? In the end, I said nothing because I didn't want to sound like a shadow from his past. Weeks passed. Then one evening, I was knitting by the fire when the landline rang. An unfamiliar number. I hesitated, my heart racing. "Hello?" A young woman's voice came through, soft and polite. "Hi, is this Mrs. Lee?" "Yes. Who's calling?" My name's Emily. I'm Daniel's fiancé." I froze. She continued, "I hope it's okay that I called. I found your number in his old contacts. I just wanted to talk to you." I didn't know what to say. For years, I had imagined this moment, but it never sounded like this. "Of course," I said quietly. "It's more than okay." Emily's voice was gentle, with that kind of kindness you can hear without even seeing the face. She said, "I know things haven't been easy between you and Daniel. He doesn't talk about it much, but I can tell it hurts him." My throat tightened. "Does he ever mention me?" She paused. "Sometimes. Mostly when he talks about childhood, the fishing trips, your apple pies, the porch swing. He says you used to sing while cooking." I smiled, tears in my eyes. "He remembered that?" She laughed softly. "Yes, ma'am, every detail." Then her tone changed. "Mrs. Lee, I think he wants to call you, but he doesn't know how. He's afraid." "Afraid?" "Yes, he said he hurt you, that he said things he can't take back." I swallowed hard. He was young. I was stubborn. We both said things we didn't mean. There was a pause. Then Emily said quietly, "I think he needs to hear that from you." After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Her words echoed in my mind. He needs to hear that from you. I looked around the living room, the old photos, the worn couch, the clock that hadn't been reset since Tom died. It all felt frozen in time, like my whole life had been waiting for this one conversation. So I picked up my phone and stared at the screen. But I didn't have his new number. Emily had called from a blocked one. I thought about writing another letter, but what if it didn't reach him? So again, I waited. Days turned into weeks. Then one morning, a postcard arrived. It was from Seattle, a picture of a park with cherry blossoms in bloom. On the back, it said, "Hi, Mom. Emily told me she spoke with you. Thank you for being kind. I've been thinking a lot about Dad lately. About everything. There's so much I never said. I'll call you soon. Daniel." I pressed the card to my chest and whispered, "Please mean it this time." But soon didn't come right away. 2 more months passed before the phone finally rang again. It was a cold evening. Snow had just started to fall outside. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the heater. The caller ID showed a Seattle number. My hands trembled. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello?" "Hi, Mom." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. His voice had changed, deeper, steadier, but still familiar in a way that made my chest ache. "Daniel," I whispered, "is it really you?" He exhaled shakily. "Yeah, it's me." There was a long silence between us. 7 years of unspoken words pressing against that small line of connection. Finally, I said softly, "I got your postcard." He laughed nervously. "Yeah, I figured you would." "Your handwriting's still messy," I teased gently. That made him laugh, really laugh, And for a moment it felt like time folded in on itself, taking us back to when things were simple. Then his voice turned quiet again. "Mom, I'm sorry." Those words, I had dreamed of hearing them, but when they finally came, I didn't know how to hold them. "I'm sorry for disappearing, for making you worry, for saying those things. I thought I was running from pain, but I was just running from home." My eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, honey, I was never angry, just hurt." "I know. I was too. I blamed you for Dad's death for a long time. It didn't make sense, but I needed someone to blame." His voice cracked. "I thought if I stayed away, maybe it'd stop hurting, but it never did." I listened quietly, my heart breaking and healing all at once. Then he said it, the words that would stay with me forever. "Mom, I remember now." "Remember what?" I asked softly. "Everything. The way you used to wait for me by the window, the smell of apple pie in the kitchen, Dad's laugh, the way we used to dance in the living room on Saturday nights." He paused. "I forgot all that for so long. I only remembered the anger, but now I remember the love, too." The tears came freely then. "Daniel, honey, you never lost me. You just forgot where to look." We both sat in silence for a while, the good kind of silence, the kind that feels full instead of empty. Then he said, "Emily's pregnant. We're having a baby, Mom." I gasped softly, "Oh, sweetheart." He said, "I don't know why, but when I found out, all I could think about was you, about how much you must have loved me. I finally understood." That was the turning point. That was the moment when all the years of distance melted away, when a son realized what it meant to be loved by a mother, and when a mother finally got to breathe again. We talked for hours that night, about Dad, about childhood, about life. He told me stories from the years we'd missed. At one point, he said, "Mom, I want you to meet Emily, and I want my child to know you." My hand shook. "You mean that?" He laughed. "Of course. You're my mom. Always have been." When the call finally ended, I sat there for a long time, staring at the quiet phone. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like light was slowly finding its way back in. I looked out the window at the falling snow and whispered, "Thank you, God, for bringing my boy home." I remember the morning I decided to go to Seattle. I packed a small suitcase, just enough for a weekend. I brought Daniel's favorite sweater, some homemade cookies, and a few of his old photographs. I looked around the quiet house one last time, the garden dusted in snow, Misty curled up on the couch, the porch swaying gently in the cold wind. I whispered, "It's time. Time to see him again." The bus ride felt endless. I kept my hands folded tightly in my lap, holding onto the gift bag as if it were a lifeline. Outside the window, the countryside passed slowly, fields blanketed in snow, bare trees leaning into the wind, the mountains distant and quiet. I thought about all the years that had passed, all the birthdays I had baked for alone, the letters I never sent, the moments I'd whispered his name in the dark. And I thought about the words he had spoken during that first call. "Mom, I remember now." They had settled into my chest like a warm fire on a cold night. I carried them with me through every mile. When I finally arrived in Seattle, it was late afternoon. The city buzzed with life, but it felt distant. I took a cab to the small apartment he shared with Emily. I stood outside, my hands trembling. The door looked smaller than I remembered. A part of me worried. What if he had changed too much? What if I had changed too much? I rang the doorbell. A moment later, the door opened. Daniel stood there, taller than I remembered, but with the same hazel eyes that had always belonged to him. And behind him, a warm smile. Emily. "Mom," Daniel said softly. I didn't move at first. Then he opened his arms, and I stepped into them, letting myself cry for the first time in years. "Mom," he whispered again, and this time there were no walls, no distance, just a son holding his mother after all those years. Emily stepped forward and hugged me as well. "Hi, Mrs. Lee. We've heard so much about you." I laughed softly through tears, and I feel like I already know you. She led me inside, and the apartment felt warm, full of life. Photos of them, small plants on the windowsill. and a little crib in the corner, evidence of the new life Daniel had spoken of. I knelt beside the crib and saw a tiny blanket embroidered with a name, Liam. Daniel's voice came behind me. "This is your grandson, Mom. Your little boy." I ran my hands over the soft blanket, feeling tears stream down my face. I had waited 7 long years to hold this moment in my heart. We spent the afternoon together. I watched Daniel and Emily cook dinner, laughing and teasing one another. I told them stories of when Daniel was small, how he used to chase birds in the yard, how he'd climb on the counter to steal cookies, how he laughed so loud it filled the entire house. Daniel listened quietly, smiling, sometimes shaking his head in disbelief. He admitted softly, "I forgot all of that. And now, hearing you tell me, it feels like home again." We shared dessert, chocolate cake, just like he loved as a child, and for the first time in years, it felt like our family was whole again. That evening, after Liam had gone to sleep, we sat together on the couch. I held Daniel's hand, feeling the warmth of his life again in mine. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he said, his voice quiet, full of regret. "For everything, for leaving, for forgetting, for hurting you." I shook my head. "You were young. You were grieving. I was grieving. We both did the best we could at the time." "But I was so angry," he whispered. "I thought you didn't understand. I thought you wanted me gone." "I always wanted you close," I said softly, "and I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day." He smiled, finally letting himself cry. And I let myself cry too. For the first time in 7 years, the pain of our separation felt like it was melting away, replaced by something fragile but real, forgiveness, and love that had never truly left. The next morning, Daniel handed me a small envelope. "I wrote this last night," he said. "Something I want you to read before Liam wakes up." I opened it, and inside were the words I had longed to hear for years. "Mom, I remember now. I remember all the laughter, all the love, all the moments I forgot in my anger. I'm sorry for every year I was gone. I hope we can start again, not just as mother and son, but as family. I love you." I pressed the paper to my chest, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. "I love you too, Daniel," I whispered, and I knew, truly knew, that this was the beginning of the rest of our lives together. We spent the rest of the day in the kitchen, cooking, laughing, and telling stories. Emily brought out a photo album of their wedding preparations. I looked at Daniel in his suit for the first time and felt a swell of pride I hadn't known I could feel again. And when Liam woke from his nap, I held him in my arms, tiny fingers wrapped around mine, a soft cooing filling the room. And I knew all the waiting, all the pain, all the heartbreak had led to this one perfect moment. That night, I sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. For the first time in years, the world felt full. Not perfect, not without its shadows, but alive. I whispered a prayer of gratitude for Daniel, for Emily, for Liam, and for the strength to wait, to hope, and to forgive. I sit here now, in the same apartment in Seattle, with Liam sleeping softly in his crib, and I think about the journey that brought me here. 7 years. 7 years of waiting, of wondering, of nights spent staring at the empty phone, imagining the life my son was living without me. I don't say this to hold anyone accountable or to dwell on what was lost. I say it because it matters. The waiting, the hoping, the loving even when it feels like no one is listening. Life is strange that way. It teaches you patience in the quiet moments. It shows you love in ways you might not recognize at first. I remember the small town I used to live in, Maple Ridge, the porch where Daniel once played, the swing that creaked in the wind, the smell of apple pie baking in the oven. I thought I'd lost those moments forever. And maybe for a while I had. But they weren't gone. They were just waiting. Waiting for him to remember. Waiting for us to forgive. I've learned that forgiveness isn't always about the other person. It's about letting go of the weight that keeps you from moving forward. I let go of fear, of regret, of pride. And in doing so, I found my son again. Daniel and I talk often now. He tells me about his work, his hopes and his fears. We laugh over memories from his childhood. Sometimes we cry together, quietly, without words. And every time I hold Liam, I feel that circle of love complete. I think about Tom, my husband, and I feel him smiling down at us, proud of the family we've built despite the years apart. Life moves in small steps. It doesn't always give you grand gestures or dramatic reconciliations. Sometimes it gives you letters, postcards, phone calls, and quiet evenings in the kitchen, baking cookies and sharing stories. I've learned that love doesn't vanish just because time passes. It waits. It grows quietly, patiently, and when the moment is right, it returns, stronger than before. I often think about the call, the first one after 7 years. Mom, I remember now. Those 6 words carried all the weight of lost years, of unspoken feelings, of regret and longing. And yet, they also carried hope. Hope that love can survive distance. Hope that families can heal. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone listening, it would be this. Don't wait too long to say the things that matter. Don't let pride or fear build walls that time cannot tear down. Love. Forgive. Speak. Because one day, the call might come. The words you've been waiting for, I remember now, might reach you when you least expect it. And when they do, let yourself feel it. Let the tears fall. Let the heart heal. I look at Liam, sleeping peacefully, and I whisper softly, you are loved. You always have been, and you always will be. Then I think of Daniel, my son, and I smile through tears. Welcome home, sweetheart. You're finally home.